Madam Chair, just a couple of things. I think it's been so enlightening, and I surely want to pick up on something quickly. I think there's been, by both the credit unions and the independent community bankers, and I call independent community bankers, to me, they're one and the same, which represent really the old way of doing business, which I still appreciate because you still maintain relationships with the customers. But I think there was remarks that maybe as great as 70% or some number of credit card holders actually pay their accounts on time or maybe in full. I know Mr. Gate would indicate, or in full, which then means that the other 30% have to be subsidizing that service, which then in turn means that you have to build in those penalties, those fees, and those interest rates. And I think it's undeniable, and I'm not casting blame on you two particular lenders on it, because I think actually where the abuses truly are and taking advantage of the consumer lies elsewhere. But I think we set up ourselves a system where, yes, the prudent and the responsible, but even those that are prudent and responsible sometimes, because of the situation, circumstances beyond their control, cannot make that payment, cannot pay it in full. And there are consequences. The interest that they're paying on that balance far exceeds what probably would be paid in a conventional loan instrument. I think that's undeniable, and I think we have to face this. And if it is, in fact, free money for 30 days or whatever it is, like my American Express account, I have got to pay it at the end of the month. And it does really instill discipline in me as opposed to, let's say, my Visa or whatever it is account, which I don't pay fully at the end of the month. So I understand. But the problem that we have, and now this leads me into the last question, which is going to be posed to Mr. Walker and Mr. Lum, and maybe it's just something I've struggled with, and I don't know Mr. Chabot and the chairwoman. I don't think that Congressman Guerra was here. But a couple of years ago, or maybe more than a couple of years ago, we voted on a bill that made it impossible to discharge a consumer's credit card debt. And we thought at that time that was a good and prudent thing to do. We weren't going to reward irresponsibility and so on. I will tell you that part of that debate did entertain that the lenders, the issuers, were going to do something else in return. We were going to look at interest rates. We were going to look at penalties. We were going to look at the fees. We were going to look at how you score. We were going to look at how you score credit and so on. We were also going to look at practices such as you may be paying your credit cards on time on two accounts, fall behind on another one, and it impacted those other two accounts. We were going to try to establish that you should set and ascertain one's creditworthiness based on that relationship, one-on-one, and not necessarily with a third party. I will tell you now, that never came to fruition. And I'm going to ask Mr. Walker and Mr. Lum, did Congress make a mistake to make it so incredibly difficult for the consumer to discharge credit card debt, which impacts small businesses?
I'm not sure, Congressman. I have studied that history a bit, but I don't really feel like I can contribute to that discussion.
Would a gentleman yield?
Of course.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I understand what you're talking. Are you talking about the bankruptcy reform bill when you say it made it impossible to discharge debt on credit cards?
The way we set it up makes it nearly impossible to completely discharge.
Okay, well, I guess when you say nearly impossible, it depends on what you're really talking about, because the bankruptcy reform, what it did is you can discharge just as you could before, except you have to go into Chapter 13. Most people qualify, you know, depending on the means test, how much your income levels are, et cetera. A whole lot of people can still fully discharge debt, including including credit card debt. Now, if you have a job and you have certain income levels, then you have to go into Chapter 13, which is like a wage earner test. The idea is that rather than discharging all the debt, if you had the ability to pay off some of the debt, that made more sense to everybody. So that's why. But
Steve, you know, reclaiming my time, it's unquestionable, indisputable, that we made it so incredibly difficult for the average consumer, businessman, businesswoman, to take advantage of bankruptcy laws that were there actually to take care of these circumstances. There is no doubt, and if you talk even to your bankruptcy trustees, to the judges, and to the practitioners on both sides, the creditor side as well as the bankruptcy applicant, we have totally changed that whole universe. I think there is no doubt about that. So, Dr. Long, do you have an opinion on where we are in that state of the law?
Thank you. I yielded to my colleague to let him go first, but I do have plenty to say. Not sure what the timer is. But let me just start by saying I'm in favor of responsible borrowing and lending, and I think across this table and probably in this room at large, we're all in favor of people doing the right thing. The problem is that the bigger banks in particular are definitely playing a game. I characterize their or we may change their terms for no reason as whimsical. I think that's a very fair statement. A lot of the bankruptcies, if they are frivolous, well, you know, maybe they shouldn't be, those who are filing should not be able to so easily discharge. But on the other hand, and paybacks, kind of interesting, I personally have had dealings with the likes of MBNA, and I remember very vividly a few years ago a discussion in which I said, but we didn't do anything wrong. Go pick on someone who's done something wrong. This was a discussion about an adverse decision it had made with respect to my wife and myself personally when we had missed no payments. And the little quip, which I'm happy to repeat here today, was I said, why don't you go pick on someone who's done something wrong? The quip was, oh, we pick on them too. Well, I hope that's entered into this record. Furthermore, it doesn't take much cruising of the internet to find credit card company horror stories. Someone was on an automated payment system. The bank failed to deliver on time, no fault of their own. They were late. Years ago, anyone reasonable would have taken a letter from the bank saying, sorry, we messed up this payment. Please, no credit card company, it was our fault. Let things go on as normal. And someone would have accepted that. They don't do that now. They are waiting for someone to be late. They want someone to be late. And they will they'll just cream someone if they're late. 1 hour late. I've got a site tip for that, which is in a paper.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your indulgence.
Mr. Chabot, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I don't want to get into a huge discussion here about the bankruptcy law that was basically kicked around for 7 or 8 years in the Congress before it finally passed a few years ago. But the whole idea of the changes that did pass with considerable support on both sides, although it was mostly Republican votes. There were a fair number of Democrats who supported the change as well. The idea was we had some folks that were literally filing for bankruptcy on a fairly regular basis every 7 years. There were just a lot of abuses in the system, and that was causing the average household to have, you know, an extra cost I believe it was $500–600 a year or something. Just stuff cost more because people weren't paying for what they bought. They were just filing bankruptcy. So we were trying to do away with the abuses. Now, and Henry Hyde was instrumental in this. He was the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I believe, when this passed. And what Henry was trying to do was a lot of folks who clearly it was a medical problem they'd had, loss of job. There are a lot of people who really needed bankruptcy. It was still there. They can still file and have all their debts discharged and get a fresh start. But for those folks that do have a reasonable income, and this is written in the law, reasonable income, and able to pay at least a portion of their debts, why not have them over a period of a number of years try to pay off some of that debt so that debt isn't just hoisted on the rest of the consumer public. That was the idea of the bankruptcy reform. So I just didn't want to leave unchallenged the fact that all debt, that credit card debt is non-dischargeable now. That's just not the case. Some of the credit card debt is clearly dischargeable by those folks at lower income levels. Folks that have income and can pay off, some of that will be paid off. So I just wanted to put that out there. I yield back.